Welcome to Mental Health Momentum, a Silicon Slopes podcast. I'm Dr. David Morgan. I am a licensed psychologist and the Director of Mental Health Awareness here at Silicon Slopes. And on this podcast, we talk about mental health issues in businesses and beyond, and we look for solutions. And I am going to introduce my new friend to you, Julie De Jesus. Hello, Julie.
Hello, how are you?
Wonderful. Let me tell you a little bit about Julie. I love your bio too. It's like it starts differently than other bios. So listen to this. When Julie's personal experiences with human connection saved her life and changed the trajectory of her career, she became a human connection fanatic. As a keynote speaker, Julie shows audiences how to leverage human connection to fuel retention and performance. She is the author of I See You, How Compassion and Connection Saves Lives, and the host of I See You, a podcast that inspires thousands of listeners to utilize human connection to restore mental health and resilience. Julie lives in Utah with her husband, who looks like Mr. Clean and claims he's funnier than her. Their children are also quite funny, but rarely clean. Julie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me, anything more about yourself besides that your husband looks like Mr. Clean and your children aren't very clean. Yeah.
That's about it.
Is that it?
Well, funny that you should bring that up. I recently interviewed Kevin Franke, who's the ex-husband of Ruby Franke, on my podcast about his healing journey, since obviously a really horrific situation to be a part of. And it's interesting. I've never been famous enough to have like a hate video made about me, but there was a reaction video made about the interview we did. It's had like over 70,000 views.
Oh, dang.
And I know, right? And I
All
started
press
listening.
is good press, maybe? I don't know.
I don't know. I watched like it's 2 hours long. It's 2 hours. And I watched a couple minutes and they reacted to like one way my voice sounded. I was like, oh, this is going to give me insecurities for the rest of my life. So I've not watched the whole thing. But the one thing they did bring up that we love is they brought up they looked at my bio on the website and Mr. Clean. And they're like, he doesn't look like Mr. Clean. He looks like Mr. Worldwide, who is Pitbull, the rapper.
Oh, okay.
So my husband's like, well, sorry they like bashed you the whole time, but like it could be worse for me. He's like, I do kind of. So maybe I need to change my bio. I don't know. I guess that's all I have to add.
I don't know. And how do people have so much time and energy to like trash other people? I don't understand that. We have so much emotional, so much like a limited amount of emotional energy every day to do things. And what you spend on something you can't spend on another thing. And I'm like, why not spend that either like building yourself up or building someone else up? But anyway, no reaction videos here. Yeah. I'm not nearly famous enough to get a reaction video.
Hey, interview someone that someone else hates and seriously. Maybe you will. It turns out.
Well, okay. So I want to talk about that first sentence. Two questions I have, but Julie's personal experience with human connection saved her life and changed the trajectory of her career. So tell me more about that. And then just tell me about your kind of like experiences with mental health in general, either your own experiences or experiences with others that are close to you, because everyone's affected by this anymore.
I actually went to school to be a second grade teacher. And during my student teaching experience, I had a complete mental breakdown. I was living out of state I was going to BYU here in Utah, and I went through a national program through BYU and was student teaching out of state. And I was under mentor that was incredibly difficult and incredibly unkind, and someone that I've never worked with that kind of personality before, especially someone that I'm sure a lot of people can relate with when you feel like your boss has a say in actually quite a bit in your career and what your next step is. And so I worked 5 weeks in, I walked into the work bathroom stall and had my first panic attack, just trying to not, shoving my hand over my mouth so I wouldn't throw up and the other people would hear, and shaking uncontrollably, crying. And that started a spiral. Things got much worse from there, but I had to quit and come back to Utah and redo my experience here. And the reason I was able to do that is because there was someone that stepped in, a different leader in that situation. Okay. It was a professor liaison at BYU that was also, she served as a liaison between BYU and the schools, because you have these experiences where you go into
partnerships, basically.
Yeah, correct. And she'd worked with me before and knew the kind of teacher I was. And I remember calling her, trying to explain to her what was going on. I'm crying, and her just say, Julie, stop. What happened to you out there? She didn't even recognize me on the phone. She was instrumental in getting me back in the classroom. Even the first day, I didn't even make it 2 hours. All I had to do was sit in the back of the classroom. And 2 hours in, I walked up to the mentor teacher there and I said, "I'm sorry, I'll never be a teacher." And I walked out just crying. And I got to call my mom to give me a ride from an elementary school, which is like makes you feel super good as an adult. Like a really humbling moment. It was a
At
good
least
time.
she's still there, right?
Right. Yeah. The fact that she lived
Yeah,
nearby.
exactly.
Yeah. It was like, yeah, it was a good time. But after that, I really was in and out of therapy, on and off meds. I mean, it was not just a one-time experience.
Yeah.
But it was really this leader that stepped in, and she called me that first day when I went home early. She left me a voicemail. I'm under a blanket on my sister's couch. I remember just, no one's getting me out from under that blanket. I'm ashamed. I'm back in this safe environment. Strings have been pulled to help me get to here, to adjust so that I can still graduate. And I can't even sit in the same environment for more than 2 hours. I don't even have to do anything. I'd gone from this feeling very capable, as capable as you are at 21, about to graduate college when you know everything. And then to be in a place where I had lost the confidence to tie my own shoes. But I remember she left me a voicemail, and I'll never forget what she said, which is, "I heard what happened today. I'm going to ask you to try again tomorrow. We can do this 1 day, 1 hour, 1 minute at a time if we have to, but we're going to get you back on your feet. You're going to be a teacher." And I did. I went on I was able to, I actually went the next day, and I never came home early again because she saw me. She made me feel human. And I had very little to offer, but she knew what I could be, and she'd seen my potential before. And she gave me, which is something I teach leaders a lot, but she gave me a small manageable task, which was just to try to show up the next day. We're going to do, 1 minute at a time if we have to, is a pretty small ask of a leader. But because she saw me, even though I said I would never get out from under that blanket, and because she gave me those small manageable tasks that next morning, putting on my mascara as it's like running down my face, because I was like, well, I'm a mess, but at least I'm going to look pretty for work, And so I'm putting it on, and I really did. I never left early again, and I was able to graduate, and I went on to teach. But that really led to a passion for putting a spotlight on the people that have seen me in my life, because as I mentioned, that was not my only time really struggling with my mental health. That was the anchor for a journey that, to some extent I'm still on. I think we all are. It's a journey through life, but I'm in a much, much more solid place, obviously years and years later, but I still think that's something I'll always be aware of, is my susceptibility to anxiety and depression. But that was the experience that started it all for me, that got me on a path of doing a lot of inner child work, things that had not been addressed. And that leader, there was really a compare and contrast of two leaders that I worked under.
The one that sent you running, screaming out of the room, and then the one who saw you after that.
Yeah. That leader really became an anchor and inspiration for starting the ICU podcast. And, when I was contracted to write my book, ICU, and then starting to keynote to help people understand really, like, this is what works and this is what does not.
Right.
And mental health at home is impacting mental health at work. There's no question. This was all pre-COVID, before people were more open to talking about it. I think COVID really, something good that came from it is people became more aware and more open to it as they themselves struggled in the isolation, which is the opposite of connection and healing, right? But really just what it means to see someone and the amount of healing that can take place just in that, which then does improve their performance and the retention and their willingness to follow you. Because when you see me, I'll follow you anywhere.
Right.
If you see me as a human, yeah.
So when you say I see you, I know you mean more than that, than just like I see you right now, right? I can see you across the table.
No, that's it.
But just for the listeners, explain what that means. Like, what did it mean for you to be seen? What does it mean for us to see others? Like, what's the extra effort we have to go to do that?
To illustrate that, the first time this leader came to observe me in my new teaching situation, I go back. Afterwards, we sit down. She has, a work performance review. There's a rubric. It's color coded. I'm sure other people have had these kind of one-on-one sit downs that can be kind of scary. And I'm sure I'd done a terrible job. She pulls it out. We're sitting across from the table from each other, and she flips it over and just slides it across. She said, "You can look at that later. How are you doing?" Obviously, there's a lot of different ways to make someone feel seen. There's eye contact, there's a touch on the shoulder, there's employee recognition, there's highlight. There's so many different ways, but I've heard people talk about my manager asks me how I'm doing every single day when I come to work and they listen. I see you as a human first before a number.
Right.
I think Nate Randall does a great job. He spoke at Utah Business Conference the year before I did. I spoke this last November, and I remember him saying something that I thought was so important and something that I've never been able to verbalize, but straight out of a pretty successful leader that's done some really neat things and has a really happy work culture. If you look at the studies, he said, I never call my employees, they are my people. And then he did something really important, because some pushback I've gotten, or just questions I've gotten, which I think are important questions, is, well, there's got to be expectations in work.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of, especially some of the old school ways of being raised is, okay, well, we can't just be fluffy and warm. We're like, we have to make money. We have 100%. And this is how he did it. He said, I never call my employees, I call them my people. And he said, and I never call them my family, because I don't fire my family. And my family gets my best. And I think that is such a great illustration of how you can make people feel seen. And it does not need to turn into enablement and not having expectations.
Right. Well, and it's a false dichotomy, right? When people say, well, either you can be kind and nice to them, or you have to be expecting and demanding of them. No, both those things can exist at the same time. It just requires a little bit of flexibility in the leader to step back and say, how can we do both of these? And it sounds like what Nate has done is he said he's found that spot in the middle instead of the two extremes.
And isn't that where so much of truth lies? I
Everything's
find so
in the
often,
middle.
yes, and our culture today is so, there can be so much divisiveness of people trying to get us to choose. I want you to choose this or this.
Right.
You are either good or bad. The black and white thinking. I talk a lot about thinking in high definition, but really the black and white thinking of we're raised as little kids, and I think it's a survival tactic of my own kids. Mom, is it a good guy or a bad guy? Right? That's how we're taught. Are they dumb or are they smart? Are they lazy or are they productive? When really truth, I have found, is often a lot more in the middle. Yeah. But it's not always the sexy answer. It's not the things that make the headlines.
Totally. Yeah.
Right? The whole reason that thing we talked about at the beginning of who I interviewed on my podcast, the whole reason a video was made about that, it wasn't because of me. It was because it was something that is really controversial in the headlines. And so for us to then say, because Kevin Franke has been asked by Dr. Phil multiple times to come on, literally like the day his interview came out, he's like, yeah, Dr. Phil just called me. Like, they still want me to come on. But what he's being asked for is they want to get into the abuse. They want to get into let's psychoanalyze. They don't want to talk about ICU. They don't want to. Okay, what did your neighborhood do?
He'll be a prop on Dr. Phil. Yeah, exactly. And that's
and the division, the hunger for the division is so rampant. And I just think that we don't. That's not how we solve problems. Yeah. That's how we create them and stir them up.
Exactly right.
And it's exhausting.
It is exhausting. Well, let's talk about your book, and it's on the power of compassion and connection. Now, so I know a little bit about, obviously, what started that. So why the book? I mean, that's a big thing. Congratulations, by the way. Writing a book is not easy.
You're nice. Yeah, it's been 5 years since it came out. It was in 2020, and that was crazy. I received the contract and wrote it in 3.5 months. So it was a wild thing, but it was really
pre-COVID
special.
You got the contract or post-COVID?
It was in February. I think it was February 5th,
okay.
2020.
I just wondered if COVID was like a catalyst for that type of thing. Well, and actually, we didn't even know enough about it. It was like 2021 and 22 where we started thinking, oh my gosh, connection.
Oh,
and
no.
Things. Right.
This was all based on what I was doing beforehand, which was, once again, my mental breakdown was pre-COVID. Right. I needed people. I was doing it before it was cool, right? To connect. Like, I needed this before. But yeah, the book was really special to write. It was really cool. It was hard to write too. But really cool. It was interesting the first time I wrote it. And I think this is really common for anyone that presents content, so I'm an author and a speaker. I also consult other people for presenting for their presentations. But it's really common in any of those areas when we started on this journey because of something really important and especially maybe traumatic and life altering that happened to us, it's really common to accidentally, not even on purpose, make it a lot about us. We have this story we want to
Yes.
share. That's so common as I've worked with people on their presentations and as I've spoken to audiences myself. When I first started speaking, my keynote was a lot more about me. It just was. The first draft I wrote of that book, I remember having my sister read, and I remember it hurt my feelings, but she called me and she said, "Hey, this is really well written. Like, you're a good writer. I don't know if I would have finished this book because it was so heavy." Because I had just verbally thrown up of,
Yeah.
I want to talk about the hardest things I've been through and how I got through it. And not that there's not something to stories of overcoming for inspiration, but if you don't make it about, if you're a speaker, the audience,
Yeah.
if you don't make your story relatable to help them think about theirs, then there's no point of you being there.
Right.
Because no one's going to relate to exactly to my life, because none of us have the same birth order, the same biology, right? Like, there's no way. And so being able to take whatever content it is and make it about other people is, I think, so worthwhile
Yeah.
if you really want to create impact. And that's what I tried to do. And I see you, and I'm happy it's been helpful to the people it has.
Well, and what great feedback from your sister too. I mean, I've written books as well, and
Yeah.
I'll send it out for feedback, and the glowing feedback makes you feel great, but
It
the
does. I
negative
love
feedback
it.
is awesome because it hurts, but it's
Yeah.
like, okay, this is something that's wrong with this. It needs to be changed.
Yeah.
And you can, if you can, find a way to, that's just us getting tough, right? And learning
Yep.
to deal with things. And that's the way we improve, is by
Yep.
even people like in that connection process that you've been describing, where people feel seen, and that is also an opportunity to engage in discussions about what each of us can do to improve as well. I mean, again, it's not the either or. It's not, I just have to be
Yes.
completely loving and accepting, or completely harsh and exacting. There's things for that in the middle.
Yeah.
And the more people, I think, feel understood, especially in a work setting, the more likely they are to be able to take and receive feedback.
100%.
Yeah, if they think that you have a vested interest in them,
Mhm.
they don't come to work thinking there's no expectations here. Of course they know that. Everyone knows that. And like
Yeah.
you said, like kind of the old school people saying, well, there's got to be expectation. Everyone at work knows there's an expectation. That's why they went to work.
100%.
And they have to do something to get something in return. But they also want to feel like they're that person or part of the people.
Oh, and I know people that have turned down way more money because of how much they love their job, and
Yeah.
they'll never leave
Yep.
it because of the relationships there. And it makes them want to work harder
Yeah.
and to perform harder. They're bought into something bigger than their paycheck that is shocking on the numbers and on the paper, but it's a lifestyle of, I like how I feel when I'm here. I feel fulfilled. I feel all these things. There's I think that the salary is no longer being I would say even like the primary front runner of
I
the race.
agree. Yeah.
Because people have learned it's not worth the cost, the
Yeah.
risk sometimes, if I'm not going to feel seen. That has now, there's been, everybody has different life experiences, maybe why that becomes important to them. Mine's different than yours, I'm
Yeah.
sure. But you realize, I think, in time, in that process of, there are things worth trading money over, and quality of life and mental health is 100% one of them.
It really is. And I think it's changed in the last 20 to 30 years as well, because it used to be that you'd get employed by a company and you were loyal to them and they were loyal
Yeah.
to you, and you worked there for 40 years and
Yeah.
you get the gold watch and the retirement party.
Yeah.
And I remember my father-in-law, he had an experience like that. He worked for many, many years for the same company, and then the company changed hands. A new business bought them out, and his job was eliminated, and he was maybe 3 or 4 years from retirement. He was able to retire anyway, but they walked in, they escorted him out of the building, they'd pack your stuff and escort you out. And this after he put in 35 years of work for this
Wow.
company. And it was just insane, that would happen. And so I think people have gotten that feeling like, okay, I mean, it'd be lovely if businesses were still loyal to their people, and they probably should be, quite frankly, to a certain degree,
Yeah.
But when people feel expendable, then that's when they go look for something else. But I think you're right. They're not necessarily looking for the higher payday. They're looking for, how can I feel?
I want to feel
decent. I just want to go home every night with
I want
a
to feel peace about
Yeah,
what I do in my life.
exactly.
Yeah. I don't even think they need to feel happy all the time. I think they
No,
can feel challenged.
no.
They can feel stress. They can feel the crunch of a deadline, but they want an internal peace.
Yeah.
I think that's becoming more of a commodity than ever. And that happens through connection. That's how we build and improve our mental health and resilience. I heard it described really well once, that connection is like I obviously don't know cars very well, but is it the shocks, right? There's like when you go over a speed bump,
I
there's
think
that
shocks.
buffering,
Yes.
right?
I'll talk to our producer after this. He's a car guy, but he'll tell us if we're wrong.
Okay, great. Whatever that's called out there. I am not a mechanic, so that's not what I paid for. So, but really, when you go over a speed bump and you have those shocks,
Right.
you really don't feel it that much.
Right.
But when those shocks are gone, man, you feel it. You can get back injuries, everything. And so when there's a lack of connection that's been built up, and part of that, a big piece of it that I talk about in the keynote that I give the most, called the connected leader, is building trust. And there's an interesting spin. I talk specifically about being able to receive, not just give, as a leader, and how that builds trust. But if that shock isn't there, oh, you're going to feel every single bump in the road, and it's going to feel so hard. Even the small tasks are going to feel hard. And so building up that shock, which is connection,
Right.
then you can handle the divots and the months where you don't bring in as much and you need to make changes, you need to have hard conversations. You can handle those kind of conversations because the shocks are already in place.
Right. If you're going to keep using that metaphor, you should probably talk to a mechanic and just have her educate you as to exactly what this.
It's not in my book or anything. Yes, I should. I really should. I think it was in a therapy appointment, so you're welcome for free therapy.
Exactly.
Anyways, I'm pretty sure that's when that was. So I don't think I've ever even said that out loud before, so you're welcome.
So tell me then, when you're working with businesses, like how do you teach them, like you talked about, like the connected leader, right?
Yeah.
That's one of your best keynotes. So
Yeah.
what are the principles you
workshops,
teach them? Because leaders are going to listen to this and they're going to go, hey, how do I do that? So do you have a couple of suggestions?
Yeah, for sure. So I really break it down to 3 pillars in my research and study. So there's I see you, I appreciate you, and I trust you. And those are really the things that I've seen in my research. And as I've talked to business leaders all over the U.S. and as I've spoken, those are really the 3 things that people are looking for to want to stay and to perform, is feeling seen, feeling appreciated, and feeling trusted. There's many different tools, and I go over some of those and a lot more in depth in the workshop, but some of the really big ones that I guess I'll share because I've seen them make the greatest impact on people, or I hadn't thought of that way, is number 1, making the I trust you piece, being willing to not just give, but also receive. Trust is built by giving and receiving. Right. And the reason I say that is, if you want there to be solid trust in your relationship with your people, if you're only willing to give, and part of that I think can look like having a very polished image where you don't need help.
Right.
That is the example you are setting. And people are a lot less likely to come to you and actually ask questions when there's issues, because you need to create that reciprocity of, this is a safe place where we see asking for help and collaborating as a strength. If you are up here and they are down there, no one relates to that. Now, do I think there needs to be, once again, the pushback of, do I think that you need to confidently establish, like, I'm going to do this. I have your own confidence that you can do this. Sure. Great. But to your people, and yes, you can have the final say, but to your people, you need to be a relatable person that also is better because they ask for help when they need it. And it's a collaborative effort, because if it's all on you, first of all, that's a lot of pressure as a leader, like your own mental health, I worry about. But those people then, if they see the asking for help as a strength, they're a whole lot more likely to take critical feedback, to utilize it, to workshop things they're unsure about, instead of just going on their own way or being afraid and going looking for another job because they're too scared to have a conversation.
Right. I love that. I think flawed examples are the best examples, because we're all flawed, right? And so we look around, and the people that you want to emulate, but you feel like you can't because they're perfect. And that's the facade, right? Because none of us are perfect.
Yeah.
All of us have our flaws. And so that's the simplest thing to do, is just to say, just let that show, and just to say, I had a really hard day today as a leader, or this week's been a struggle for me, or there are a lot of times when I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And so I ask questions. And then when people see that, then they identify
like, oh, that's
with
okay.
that. Yeah, exactly.
That's okay.
There's a tacit permission that is given there, just by setting that example. And then, like you said, when one sets the opposite example of flawlessness and perfection and polish,
no one relates to that.
No, they don't relate to that.
And they also don't, I don't think they're as committed to you, because they don't, the connection of like, how do you feel connected to someone that you feel like you don't have a lot in common with? Of like, oh, well, I make mistakes and I I actually go home and sometimes I, fight with my kids or whatever it is. That sounds like domestic violence. I hope that's not the case, but you know what I mean?
Arguments, yeah.
I was
that's
going to
right,
say fight with my spouse, but then I was like, is that outing my own spouse that I'm newly married to? No, whatever it is, like.
If it's more like pit bull, then yeah, you look out. Yeah.
Well, when you're married to a rapper, you get in some fights, right? Things they talk about in their songs, right? I got things to say. I think it's so huge and beneficial, for a leader to be more human. And I think there is a balance of being able to be direct and be a leader. And yes, that is your role. I don't think you can not adjust. I don't think like walking around just saying like I have no idea what I'm doing and like is a helpful thing, right?
Like there's a balance. That's the other side of the pendulum, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, people want to choose the extremes,
Right.
and often what I'm pushed back on is, okay, but what about this extreme? And I'm like, well, yeah, no. But when we've been over here for too long, coming in the middle, we're finding that there is higher retention and higher influence and higher buy-in by people because they see you as real, as someone that's doing the best that they can with what they have. And that includes utilizing the people around them of like, hey, I got this figured out, but I'm kind of stuck here. Does anything come to mind for you? But then as the leader, I am going to make the decision, but man, I would love your input.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's huge.
It is. Yeah.
It's huge. And that's who I want to follow. I mean, right.
And I think almost everybody. Yeah, exactly. I don't think you're alone in that. So.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, thank you so much, Julie, for sharing your insights today. And I don't know, you just seem like the person you see people. I get that, and I think it's a blessing to people that are in your circle and people that can learn from you.
Thank you.
ICU.com, is that where they go?
So my speaker as a speaker and a consultant. Thank you. I'm a consultant. I know what I'm doing as a speaker. We just had a shift because I just started ICUliving.com, which is my business now, which is exciting. But as a keynote speaker and a consultant, Julie-DeJesus.com.
Julie-DeJesus.com.
Julie-DeJesus.com is an architect. I'm sure she's very successful. She has not responded about giving me her URL. So it's Julie-DeJesus.com. And then to find out more about ICU Living, that's ICUliving.com. But yeah, for speaking consulting.
Awesome.
That's where you go.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And thanks everyone for listening. Remember that change starts with you, and together we can increase our mental health momentum.